California used to feel like the ultimate promise, a place where ambition paid off. But that image is breaking down right in front of us. The same state that gave rise to Silicon Valley, powered Hollywood, and helped define the American dream now seems overwhelmed by the very system it built. Housing values are sliding, jobs are disappearing, and in just 1 year alone, more than 240,000 people packed up and left. Monthly mortgage bills have skyrocketed to nearly 3 times what they were, insurance premiums are surging out of control, and unemployment is steadily creeping toward the 6% mark. From the tech sector fallout in San Francisco to the spiraling housing crisis in Los Angeles, the warning signs are no longer isolated. They're everywhere. What was once seen as a land of endless opportunity has become ground zero for a modern American economic breakdown, a slow, grinding collapse that still hasn't reached its peak. Number 10. Fresno. Fresno used to be marketed as California's budget-friendly alternative, a blue-collar city where middle-income families still had a realistic shot at owning a home and building a stable life. That version of Fresno is disappearing quickly. By 2025, the city's median home price climbed to about $470,000, pushing the typical monthly mortgage payment close to $3,300, nearly 3 times higher than it was 10 years ago. For a city where the average household earns just over $66,000 a year, those numbers are crushing and simply unsustainable. The job market only makes things worse. Fresno's unemployment rate has surged to an alarming 7.9%, the highest anywhere in the country. Roughly 1 out of every 13 workers is unable to find employment, and opportunities continue to dry up. Since 2021, job postings in the area have dropped by more than 40%, according to Indeed, signaling a sharp pullback from employers. As affordability collapses, the housing market is starting to buckle. Back in late 2022, Fresno had around 1,600 homes listed for sale. Today, that number has ballooned to nearly 3,000, almost double, while actual sales have fallen 35% compared to last year. Sellers who once boasted about bidding wars are now slashing prices, with average cuts hovering around $28,000 per home. Rentals aren't offering relief either. The typical 3-bedroom home now rents for roughly $2,500 a month, which means investors who bought at today's prices are losing close to $1,200 every month. At the same time, Fresno's construction industry, once a reliable source of jobs, is slowing dramatically. High interest rates have choked off development, and building permits are down 46% compared to 2023, a clear sign that builders have hit the brakes. Local government finances are also feeling the strain. Despite rising costs, property tax revenue has increased by only 1.5%, while homeowners' insurance premiums have jumped 14%, driven largely by wildfire risks across the Central Valley. Even agriculture, the backbone of Fresno's economy, is struggling. Persistent droughts, tighter water restrictions, and ongoing labor shortages have pushed farm bankruptcies up 22% since 2020. With wages stagnating, housing costs soaring, and unemployment hitting record levels, Fresno has become a textbook example of California's wider unraveling: overpriced real estate, disappearing jobs, and a growing sense of despair. Once viewed as the final affordable haven, the largest city in the Central Valley now stands as a stark warning that even California's cheaper markets are running out of runway as the deeper crash draws closer. Number 9. Truckee. Truckee was once the definition of a postcard-perfect mountain town, an alpine escape tucked near Lake Tahoe that seemed immune to California's chaos. Today, it stands as one of the clearest examples of how badly the state's housing market has fractured. Home prices here surged past $1.2 million at their peak in 2022, but by late 2025, values had fallen nearly 19%, wiping out more than $220,000 in equity for the average homeowner. At the same time, supply has surged while demand has collapsed. Housing inventory has quietly doubled, yet home sales are down a staggering 45% year over year, the sharpest decline anywhere in Northern California. Monthly mortgage payments tell the same story. What averaged around $3,800 just 3 years ago now tops $6,200, an overwhelming burden in a town where the median household income barely reaches $112,000. Truckee's problems go beyond falling prices. They're rooted in risk. Wildfires and the retreat of insurance companies have shaken buyer confidence to the core. In 2025, major insurers like State Farm and Allstate either raised premiums by as much as 36% or pulled out of entire zip codes altogether. Many homeowners were pushed into California's FAIR plan, where insuring a modest two-bedroom cabin can cost more than $8,000 per year. Everyday living costs are rising as well. Utility bills have jumped sharply, with heating expenses climbing 28% this winter after state energy subsidies were phased out. For many longtime residents, owning a home in Truckee has gone from a dream lifestyle to a relentless financial drain. Tourism, the town's economic backbone, is also faltering. Hotel occupancy dropped from 79% in 2022 to just 59% this past summer. Short-term rentals that once commanded $400 a night now sit vacant for weeks at a time. Airbnb listings have surged 42%, flooding the market and cutting nightly rates nearly in half. As visitors disappear, local businesses are feeling the pain. Many report revenue declines between 30% and 40%. Employment in leisure and hospitality, Truckee's largest job sector, has fallen 18% in just 1 year. Even migration, once the town's final pressure valve, has flipped direction. Census data shows a net loss of roughly 1,700 residents in a community of only 17,000, nearly 10% of the population gone in a short span of time. Now facing shrinking demand, inflated home values, runaway insurance costs, and a stagnating economy, all more than 6,000 feet above sea level, Truckee has lost its shine. What once symbolized California's mountain wealth has become a stark warning of what happens when environmental risk, heavy debt, and overvaluation collide head-on. Number 8. Riverside County was long pitched as Southern California's bargain option, a place where families priced out of Los Angeles could still buy a home and commute their way to stability. Instead, it has become a case study in how far suburban growth can stretch before it snaps. Home prices in the county topped out around $620,000 in 2023. Since then, they've slipped roughly 2%, landing near $605,000, a decline that looks minor on paper but masks far deeper damage underneath. The real warning signs show up in activity, not prices. Home sales volume has collapsed by 45%, while the average time a property sits on the market has ballooned to 52 days, the longest stretch in more than 10 years. With mortgage rates now hovering above 7.5%, the typical buyer is staring at monthly payments near $4,100. That's in a region where the median household earns about $78,000 annually, meaning nearly 58% of income is being swallowed by housing, almost double what's considered financially safe. Riverside's market is heavily dependent on FHA-backed loans, which makes it especially vulnerable as pandemic-era relief programs wind down. As forbearance protections expire, stress is quickly turning into missed payments. Over the past year, 90-day mortgage delinquencies have surged 61%, and foreclosure filings have more than tripled, according to ADAM data. At the same time, inventory is piling up. Active listings have jumped from roughly 4,800 homes to more than 7,000, a 46% increase. Even with more options available, buyers remain on the sidelines, paralyzed by high borrowing costs and economic uncertainty. The local job market is adding fuel to the fire. Riverside's economy relies heavily on logistics and warehousing, and those sectors are starting to pull back as freight demand slows. Amazon's massive Moreno Valley hub has cut its workforce by nearly 15%, while trucking layoffs are spreading into neighboring San Bernardino County. Fewer hours and fewer jobs mean even less confidence from would-be buyers. For investors, the math has completely fallen apart. A typical single-family home rents for around $2,600 a month, barely enough to cover half of today's mortgage payment. On top of that, property insurance premiums have climbed 13%, and utility costs are up another 10% year over year, further eroding returns. What was once sold as affordable Southern California living has quietly turned into a debt trap. Riverside now sits on a landscape filled with over-leveraged homeowners, stalled developments, and eerily quiet subdivisions. It was supposed to be the pressure release valve for Los Angeles's excesses, Instead, Riverside is drifting toward becoming California's next foreclosure hotspot, a market cracking under the combined strain of crushing debt, weakening employment, and a refusal to accept just how fragile things have become. Number 7. San Bernardino. San Bernardino has quietly turned into the heart of California's suburban breakdown, a place where the promise of the American dream once felt attainable and now shows up in the form of foreclosure filings taped to front doors. On the surface, the numbers don't look catastrophic. In 2025, the median home price hovers around $545,000, down just 1.8% from a year earlier. But that modest decline hides a much darker reality underneath. Mortgage distress is accelerating at an alarming pace. Delinquencies have doubled in just the past 12 months, and roughly 1 out of every 165 homes is now somewhere in the foreclosure process, the fastest escalation the region has seen since the aftermath of 2009. The local economy is unraveling just as quickly. San Bernardino's growth was built on logistics and light manufacturing, but those pillars are starting to crumble. Warehouse employment has fallen 14% since 2023 as e-commerce expansion stalls. Major logistics centers in Ontario and Fontana, which once supported more than 120,000 workers, have slashed overtime hours and shifted thousands of employees into part-time roles, cutting incomes across the region. At the same time, everyday costs keep rising. Grocery prices are up 9%. Gas is averaging around $5.30 a gallon, and monthly electricity bills now exceed $290. Wages, however, have barely moved. The illusion of affordability has completely vanished. The average household earns about $74,000 per year, yet carrying a typical mortgage, once taxes and insurance are included, now costs more than $4,000 a month. That's roughly 65% of gross income, a level that leaves new buyers financially trapped from day one. Investors who rushed into San Bernardino during the pandemic are feeling the squeeze as well. Many snapped up homes for around $400,000, expecting endless rent growth. Instead, rents have leveled off near $2,300 a month, leaving owners with negative cash flow exceeding $1,500 every single month. Adding to the strain, the city's infrastructure and social systems are showing cracks. Property crime has risen 21%, homelessness has jumped 37%, and school enrollment is shrinking as families leave for lower-cost states like Texas and Nevada. What was once a booming part of the Inland Empire has become a flashing warning sign. Soaring household debt, worsening delinquencies, and unstable employment are converging into California's next major foreclosure wave. San Bernardino, once a symbol of suburban expansion, now sits at the center of its collapse. Number 6. San Diego. San Diego has always sold itself as the ultimate lifestyle city. Endless sunshine, ocean views, and a laid-back coastal vibe. But beneath that postcard image, the city is slipping into a deep affordability crisis. The median home price now sits around $930,000, down about 2.5% from last year, yet still wildly out of sync with what locals actually earn. The average household brings in roughly $120,000 a year, while a standard 30-year mortgage now runs close to $6,200 a month. That means housing alone is swallowing nearly 73% of gross income, an impossible equation for most families. Renters aren't spared either. The rental market has fractured just as badly. A typical 2-bedroom apartment now costs about $3,400 a month, a staggering 41% increase since 2020. What was once expensive but manageable has crossed into outright unaffordable. Behind the beaches, the job market is losing momentum. San Diego's unemployment rate has climbed to 5.3%, and job postings across the region are down 22%. The city's 3 economic pillars, tourism, biotech, and defense, are all slowing at the same time. Hotel occupancy has slipped below 63%, small business bankruptcies are up 18%, and construction, once red hot, has slammed into a wall. Building permits have collapsed by 52%, signaling that developers are backing away fast. The housing market reflects that hesitation. Home sales volume is down 43% from 2021 levels, while active listings have surged past 6,700, up sharply from just 3,800 2 years ago. Sellers who once enjoyed bidding wars are now dangling price cuts of $50,000 or more, yet buyers remain frozen, unwilling or unable to take on today's costs. Insurance is piling on more pressure. Coastal flood and wildfire policies jumped 16%, pushing average annual premiums beyond $3,200. For investors, the numbers no longer add up. With property taxes averaging around 1.25% and maintenance costs steadily rising, owning rental property in San Diego has become little more than a break-even gamble. Even the luxury market is starting to crack. High-end homes in La Jolla and Del Mar are selling for about 12% below asking price, a stark reversal from the frenzy of 2021. Beneath the surface of this coastal paradise sits an economy stretched thin, propped up by credit, speculation, and a tourism sector that's losing steam. San Diego may still look flawless from afar, but behind every palm tree is a financial cliff, and more Californians are slipping over the edge each month. Number 5. San Francisco. San Francisco was once the undisputed capital of American innovation, a city that defined the future. Today, it looks more like a case study in economic erosion. The median home value has slid to about $1.22 million, down 3.8% over the past year and more than 11% since mid-2022. The collapse is even more dramatic in the condo market. Downtown units that sold for $950,000 back in 2015 are now being listed around $499,000, a staggering 45% wipeout in value. Housing costs have become completely detached from reality. The average monthly mortgage payment, which once hovered near $3,200, now exceeds $7,800. Meanwhile, the city's median household income sits around $118,000 a year. That math doesn't just strain budgets, it breaks them. The labor market that once fueled San Francisco's $535 billion metro economy is unraveling fast. Job postings for software developers have fallen roughly 70% since 2022, and overall listings on Indeed are now 17% lower than before the pandemic. Unemployment is hovering near 5.5%, and repeated waves of tech layoffs have eliminated tens of thousands of jobs at companies like Salesforce, Meta, and Google across the Bay Area. Each round of layoffs forces more homeowners to sell properties they can no longer afford, pushing active housing listings up 42% year over year. Commercial real estate is collapsing right alongside residential housing. Downtown office vacancy has reached 36%, the highest ever recorded for a major U.S. metro area. Companies that once paid $70 per square foot are now renegotiating leases at half that rate, if they're staying at all. As businesses disappear, city finances are deteriorating. San Francisco's tax revenue has dropped 18%, triggering budget cuts even as homelessness has climbed past 8,000 people, up 27% since 2019. Once celebrated as the birthplace of billion-dollar startups, San Francisco has become a warning about what happens when inequality, excess, and policy failure collide. The cost of living now runs 82% above the national average, while crime and widespread drug addiction drive out workers, families, and investors alike. Even the population is shrinking. Since 2020, more than 75,000 residents have left, reversing decades of steady growth. Despite all the hype, the so-called AI boom hasn't rescued the city. Instead, it has automated jobs away while obscuring a deeper economic slowdown underneath. For all its brilliance and innovation, San Francisco now represents an uncomfortable truth. Even the wealthiest city in America can hollow itself out under the weight of its own success. Number 4. Oakland. Just across the Bay Bridge from San Francisco, Oakland's housing market is coming apart faster than almost anyone expected. Home prices that peaked around $870,000 in 2021 have already slid to roughly $780,000, a 10% drop in barely 2 years, and forecasts suggest another 11% decline may still be ahead. The slowdown isn't subtle. Home sales volume has plunged 52% since 2022, marking the sharpest contraction anywhere in Northern California. Affordability has collapsed along with demand. The typical mortgage payment now runs about $5,200 a month, while the average household earns roughly $94,000 per year. That forces buyers to devote nearly two-thirds of their income just to keep a roof over their heads. At the same time, Oakland's unemployment rate has climbed to 5.8%, among the highest in the Bay Area. Job opportunities are drying up fast, with postings down 40% compared to pre-pandemic levels. Major employers, including Kaiser Permanente, Clorox, and regional tech contractors, have begun cutting staff, further weakening confidence. Even the port, once a pillar of Oakland's economy, is losing momentum. The port historically moved more than $100 billion in cargo each year, but global shipping slowdowns have stalled activity. Container traffic is down 18% year over year, a hit that's rippling through local tax revenues and blue-collar service jobs tied to trade. The strain is increasingly visible at street level. FHA mortgage delinquencies have jumped 72%, and roughly 1 in every 190 homes is now behind on payments. Property crime has surged 32%, making the city even less attractive to potential buyers. Investors who rushed into Oakland during the pandemic are also feeling the pain. A typical three-bedroom rental brings in about $2,800 per month, while average ownership costs exceed $5,000, leaving landlords bleeding roughly $2,200 every month. Across the city, homelessness has climbed past 5,000 people, downtown retail corridors sit half-empty, and office vacancy rates hover near 30%. Even property tax collections have fallen, down 7%, leaving the city with fewer resources for policing, infrastructure, and basic maintenance. Once viewed as San Francisco's more affordable alternative, Oakland has inherited the same crisis without the same financial cushion. The Bay Bridge no longer links prosperity. It connects two markets unraveling at the same time. Oakland's decline mirrors San Francisco's, but for working-class residents, the impact is harsher and more immediate. This isn't a routine housing cool-down. It's a full-scale social and economic breakdown, thinly disguised by clear skies and gleaming tech campuses nearby. Number 3. Napa. Napa's rolling golden hills once stood as a symbol of California's success. A picture-perfect blend of vineyards, luxury tourism, and multi-million-dollar estates. But behind the rows of Cabernet and the postcard views, the financial reality is quietly deteriorating. The median home value has slipped to around $890,000, down 4% from last year, while home sales have collapsed by 38%. The slowdown is painfully visible. Properties that easily commanded $1.2 million in 2021 are now sitting unsold at $950,000, and the average time on market has doubled to 61 days. What used to feel like an exclusive seller's market has turned sluggish almost overnight. Even Napa's iconic wine-driven economy is losing momentum. Tourism revenue has fallen 17% since 2022. Hotel occupancy has dropped below 64%, and more than 20% of tasting rooms report fewer visitors. That decline cuts deep in a county where hospitality once employed nearly 1 in 5 workers. As visitor numbers shrink, unemployment has crept up to 5.1%, and hundreds of service employees are leaving for lower-cost states like Oregon and Idaho. Housing costs, however, continue to rise in the worst possible way. After the brutal 2024 wildfire season, insurance premiums surged. Homeowners saw rates jump 18% in just 6 months, with some rural areas hit by increases exceeding 30%. State Farm requested a 36% hike locally, while Allstate stopped issuing new policies altogether. As a result, the average Napa homeowner now pays about $5,400 per year for insurance, up sharply from roughly $3,200 before the pandemic. Add in property taxes on million-dollar homes, which can easily exceed $12,000 annually, and total ownership costs for many residents now surpass $7,000 a month. That financial pressure is pushing even affluent households to reconsider staying. In 2024 alone, Napa County lost approximately 3,700 residents, marking its first significant population decline in over a decade. The signs are everywhere. Empty chateaus dot the hillsides, vineyards are being listed at nearly half their 2019 valuations, and second homeowners are quietly selling before prices fall further. Number 2. Sacramento. Sacramento, home to California's state government, has unexpectedly become ground zero for the state's housing meltdown. The median home price now sits around $520,000, down 2% from last year and roughly 7% since mid-2022. That drop represents the sharpest correction among major inland metro areas. At the same time, market activity has seized up. Home sales have plunged 41%, while active listings have swelled to about 6,200, the highest level the region has seen in more than 10 years. During the pandemic surge, buyers from the Bay Area poured into Sacramento, routinely bidding $100,000 above asking prices for suburban homes. Today, many of those same buyers are stuck owing more than their properties are worth. A typical three-bedroom home now carries a monthly mortgage payment near $3,900, while the city's median household income is only about $83,000 per year. That forces families to devote roughly 56% of their gross income to housing, a financial strain that's quickly translating into foreclosures. Signs of distress are accelerating. Delinquencies on FHA-backed mortgages have jumped 63% in just 1 year, and pre-foreclosure filings are up an astonishing 220% since 2023. What once felt like a stable market is unraveling fast. The labor market isn't offering much support either. Sacramento's economy, long anchored by state government jobs, is weakening as California implements a hiring freeze. Thousands of public sector positions have been cut, and private sector job postings are down 33%. According to Indeed, the city's unemployment rate has risen to 5.7%, while small business bankruptcies have surged 28%. Even construction, previously a bright spot, is pulling back sharply. New building permits have fallen 47% year over year, stalling suburban growth in areas like Elk Grove and Roseville. Affordability has deteriorated so badly that rents are now falling. The average rent for a two-bedroom apartment dropped 7%, the steepest decline since 2010, signaling that landlords are struggling to fill units as residents move away. Outmigration from the Sacramento metro area exceeded 22,000 people in 2024, with many relocating to states like Nevada, Texas, and Idaho. Once promoted as a more affordable alternative to the Bay Area, Sacramento is discovering that there's no true refuge left within California. Every major indicator, from collapsing sales to rising foreclosures, points in the same direction. The housing bubble has burst, and the state's broader economic decline is now unfolding right in its capital. Number 1. Los Angeles. Los Angeles has become the clearest embodiment of California's economic split personality. Extreme wealth on full display, while the foundations underneath quietly give way. The median home value now sits around $1.05 million, and purchasing an average three-bedroom home costs roughly $9,500 per month once mortgage, taxes, and insurance are included. That adds up to about $115,000 a year just to stay housed. Meanwhile, the average household earns closer to $92,000. The numbers don't just fail to align, they collapse under their own weight. While home prices are down a relatively mild 1.4% year over year, market activity tells a far more alarming story. Sales have fallen 48%, the lowest level ever recorded. Foreclosures, though still not widespread, have doubled in just 12 months. At the same time, 1 in 4 new listings is cutting prices, with average reductions hovering near $80,000. The city's economic engine is also losing power. The entertainment industry, long the backbone of Los Angeles, is sputtering badly. Film studio soundstage occupancy has dropped from 92% to just 61%. Thousands of writers and editors remain unemployed following last year's strikes, and job postings across the media sector are down 45% since 2021. The ripple effects are everywhere. Unemployment in the city has climbed to 5.6%, while homelessness has surged past 78,000 people, a 12% increase in just 1 year. Property crime is up 17%, insurance costs have jumped 19%, and utility bills have risen another 11%. Together, these pressures are accelerating an already massive population outflow. In 2024 alone, Los Angeles County lost 99,000 residents, extending a 35-year streak of domestic outmigration. Even the luxury market, once considered untouchable, is starting to crack. In Beverly Hills, average home values around $4.9 million are down 3.4%, while high-end sales have collapsed by 58%. International money is pulling back as well. Capital inflows from China have dropped 67% since 2021, removing yet another pillar of demand. For investors, Los Angeles no longer makes financial sense. Rental yields are stuck below 2.5%, ranking the city among the least profitable housing markets in the country. The long-standing belief in endless appreciation has shattered. Behind the palm-lined streets and mansion listings lies a shrinking middle class crushed by taxes, rent, and debt. The City of Angels now feels more like a city of empty wallets, a dazzling skyline masking a deep financial unraveling that those in power seem either unwilling or unable to confront.